Renewable energy grids need electrical reserves to balance the grid. Data centers have extremely large electrical capacity that can provide these reserves to the grid. What role should DCs play in these services? Optional question, mandatory question, in order to help green the grid.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like, data centers getting, or in these companies getting involved in the broader energy system, right? So I think, yeah, hyperscale data centers are some of the most energy and electricity intensive facilities per square foot that exist, right? So, hundreds of megawatts of capacity, pretty flat demand profiles. And I've heard, data centers being highly controlled, highly automated. So there's a lot of potential there to shift some of those loads, depending on the needs of the grid. Maybe when there's a lot of low carbon electricity, let's say there's a lot of wind flowing, right? So maybe you want to shift some of those workloads late at night when there's less electricity users on the rest of the grid. So I think, it's a huge resource that is so far, I think, being untapped. And I guess the real question is, how does the electricity market try to incentivize that behavior? Beyond, trying to be green, data center operators probably need a bit more price signals from the grid itself. So if we introduced time of use pricing so that the electricity was very cheap at night, maybe there'd be a signal there so that the data center operator wants to save money, also reduce their emissions. So they're going to shift some of those workloads late at night. So I think that's really the key. I think figuring out, what are the regulations that need to be put in place to overcome, what are the price incentives that need to be there, because I think technically the possibility is there. So really it's a matter of the market structure, the incentive structure that we need to work on.
Does that tie into, again, as part of the rollout of the smart grid in Ireland? We start to have these words like prosumer, not a consumer, a prosumer, where what legislation, you mentioned it there, is about to take place where you don't have a restriction of 6 solar panels for your own consumption on your roof, that you can generate an amount that at times you can sell back to the grid. And that's what the smart meter is for. It's to checks and balances. How much did you put in, how much did you take, and how much maybe we owe you or you owe us. Is that sort of at a ridiculously large scale, same logic for a data center?
Yeah, no, exactly. So, those are, millions of people and devices and maybe some people have storage, behind the meter storage and a battery that, they have electric cars maybe that are plugged in that maybe in the future could be discharging, right, to provide electricity to the grid. So I think that's, yeah, definitely on a consumer, prosumer, smaller scale, but millions of devices.
Yeah.
So you need a lot of good coordination around that. And then data center is actually a much easier way to control that load just because it's one giant industrial user of electricity. So definitely both can benefit from, increasing digitalization, smart meters, a more intelligent grid. I think historically, large industrial users like a aluminum smelter or something, if there was a shortage of electricity coming up, the grid operator might have called up the aluminum smelter and been like, oh, can you stop using electricity for a little bit because, we need this to reduce our demand. So, that's the kind of the old analog way to do it. And then now we have these highly controllable loads, very automated data centers that I think could be an even more flexible resource. Maybe we can't shut it off completely like an aluminum smelter, but,
no, but there's
going to be a segment of that demand that can be shifted. So
I think change is something that different sectors of our society and different parts of our industries adapt to quicker or slower based on how their legacy industry has operated. And I think that you've got two very distinct different types of mindsets colliding over the last decade and going to further collaborate in the next 10. Because when I talk to electrical based people, and no disrespect to any of them, but fundamentally, it's been pretty stable for 100 years that you've got large generating capacity distributed out through wires, and consumption wasn't always connected with creation. data industry or the IT industry, we change every 10 minutes, never mind every 10 years, never mind every 100 years when we didn't exist. So trying to get people with different mindsets and different speed dials to coordinate a cohesive plan. When you've got people involved, you'll always have, that's the way we've always done it now, suck it up, and these are, well, that's the worst thing you can possibly say to me, because we're going to be disrupted out of business in 6 weeks if we keep doing everything we did before. So that sometimes is a bigger inhibitor than the technologies that are there. It's the get the two at a level playing field, that they're actually all in the betterment of reducing the amount of carbon. That should be everything right now, is to reduce, in whatever way we can, reduce the amount of particles that are creating the environmental increase in the temperatures. And then all the rest is sort of the how. That's the why. And I think we're nearly there with some of the advocates that you have for data coming from the BP recently have done a huge thing with Microsoft, where they realize that they need Microsoft's technology to decarbonize, and they're saying it to the stock markets, and they're putting big dollars on it. The renewable funds are only investing if they have. So follow the money. It's one of the things that is so important. George, I think we're done. I'm sure we could have another chinwag about a lot of stuff. Thank you again for the participation. I thanked you off air for your ability to take spreadsheets and science and metrics and KPIs and link them to Netflix, which is, I'm sorry for all the 15 years of work you did in college, but that's probably the most people remember. Thank you for always being accessible as well. And I think we're done.
Great. Thank you so much, Garry.